My name is Brooke Larson. I am 34 years old. 2 years ago, my mother-in-law insisted we use her hand-picked fertility clinic in Spokane because she claimed it was the only place that could guarantee a healthy baby for the family legacy, and that I owed it to everyone to stop wasting time with my so-called career stress. She smiled through every appointment like she was the hero saving our marriage while quietly pulling strings I never saw. Now 6 months pregnant and sitting alone in a quiet Spokane hospital consultation room after a routine scan turned terrifying with unexpected bleeding, my mother-in-law barged in uninvited, and the doctor revealed documents proving she had secretly paid staff to switch the sperm samples so the baby would come from a donor she personally approved to protect the bloodline. My hands shook, but I swore right then and there I would not let her twist my child or my life into her control. If you have ever felt your own mother-in-law turning your biggest joy into a weapon drop, a comment with where you are watching from and what part of this hits too close to home, because I read every single one and it helps knowing I am not alone in this kind of family pressure. I drove home from that hospital in a fog, the Spokane rain streaking the windshield like it was trying to wash away the truth I could not unhear. My mother-in-law had always been the type who smiled while tightening the noose. She lived 10 minutes away in the same quiet suburban neighborhood outside Spokane where neat lawns and minivans hid a lot of quiet control. From the day my husband and I got engaged 3 years earlier, she had made it clear that any child of ours belonged first to the Larson family name and only second to me. I was a marketing coordinator at a small tech firm downtown. Nothing flashy, just steady middle-class work that let me pay my half of the mortgage and keep my independence. My mother-in-law never liked that. She called my job cute in that saccharine voice that really meant unnecessary. The pregnancy had been hard-won after 20 months of trying naturally, followed by the in vitro fertilization cycle my mother-in-law practically scheduled for us. She had researched the clinic herself, paid the initial consultation fee without telling us, and kept repeating how lucky we were that she knew the right people. My husband thought it was sweet. I thought it was overbearing, but I was tired and hopeful, so I went along. Now I knew why she had been so insistent. The doctor's folder showed payments totaling $65,000 routed through accounts she controlled. $45,000 to the nurse who had handled the samples and $20,000 to the donor she had hand-selected because his profile matched the strong Larson traits she wanted. She had framed it to the staff as a private family arrangement to spare my husband embarrassment over his low sperm count. The real plan was darker. She intended to wait until the baby was born, push for an early DNA test under the guise of medical peace of mind, and then use the results plus altered clinic notes to claim I had cheated. That way, she could pressure me into signing over guardianship rights, or at least force me to stay under her thumb forever out of guilt and fear. I sat in our living room that evening, replaying every conversation. My husband came home late from his accounting job and found me staring at the ultrasound photo the doctor had still given me before the full truth landed. He looked exhausted. "Rough day, babe?" he asked, kissing my forehead the way he always did. I almost told him everything right then, but something stopped me. My mother-in-law had already texted 3 times asking if I was okay and reminding me that stress was bad for the baby she had helped create. The guilt trip was already starting. The next morning, I called my best friend, Claire Thompson. We had known each other since college in Seattle, and she had moved to Spokane 2 years ago for work. I met her at our usual coffee spot near the river, the one with the big windows overlooking the falls. I slid the copied documents across the table and watched her face go pale. "My mother-in-law did this," my best friend whispered. "She paid to pick the father of your child without telling you." I nodded throat tight. My best friend had never liked my mother-in-law. She used to joke that my mother-in-law treated me like an incubator for the Larson name. Now, the joke was not funny anymore. I knew I needed proof that could not be dismissed as pregnancy paranoia. So I hired a private investigator, Rebecca Hayes. a no-nonsense former detective who worked out of a small office downtown near the courthouse. I met her the following week while pretending to run errands so my mother-in-law would not ask questions. Rebecca listened without interrupting, took notes, and leaned back in her chair. Your mother-in-law covered her tracks pretty well, but not perfectly. I can get bank records, emails, and statements from the clinic staff in about 10 days. I left her office feeling both terrified and strangely focused for the first time since the hospital. Meanwhile, the psychological pressure from my mother-in-law ramped up in that slow, suffocating way she specialized in. She started showing up at our house unannounced with casseroles and baby clothes, always with a side of guilt. You look so tired, Brooke. Maybe you should cut back on that little job of yours. The baby needs you rested, and the Larson family can help with bills if you just let us. She said it sweetly, but the jab landed every time. My sister-in-law would echo her in group texts. Mom is right, you know. Family first. My sister-in-law had always sided with my mother-in-law, the two of them forming a united front that left me feeling like an outsider in my own marriage. One evening, my mother-in-law invited us over for dinner under the pretense of discussing nursery ideas. I went because refusing would trigger another round of "you are isolating the baby" from its grandparents' lectures. We sat at her dining table in the house she had lived in for 30 years, the same one where she had raised my husband and my sister-in-law. Halfway through the meal, my mother-in-law set down her fork and looked straight at me. Brooke, I hope you understand how blessed we all are that this pregnancy happened at all. Some women in your position would be grateful instead of so independent. The word independent came out like an insult. My husband shifted in his seat but said nothing at first. I felt the familiar knot in my stomach tighten. My coworker, Tyler Brooks, had warned me once after meeting my mother-in-law at a company picnic that she had that classic controlling vibe. I had laughed it off then. I was not laughing now. Rebecca Hayes called me at work 2 days later. I have the emails between your mother-in-law and the nurse. She explicitly told them to switch the samples and keep you in the dark because she did not trust your side of the family to raise a Larson properly. There is more, but I need to show you in person. My heart hammered as I hung up. I had a meeting in 10 minutes, but all I could think was that my mother-in-law had treated my body and my future child like a project she could edit to her liking. That night I lay awake beside my husband, wondering how much he really knew. He had been distant lately, coming home late and spending hours on his phone. I told myself it was work stress. The next morning, my mother-in-law texted again, this time with a passive-aggressive note about how important it was for grandparents to be involved from day one. The pressure was building exactly the way she liked it, slow and relentless, designed to make me doubt myself until I handed over control without a fight. I tried to shake off that morning text and push through my workday at the tech firm, answering client emails and pretending everything was normal while my mind spun in circles. By mid-afternoon, I could not take it anymore and slipped out early under the excuse of a prenatal appointment. My best friend had offered to come with me to the private investigator's office, but I needed to handle this part alone so no one could accuse me of being dramatic or hormonal. Rebecca Hayes slid a fresh stack of printed emails across her desk when I sat down. Your mother-in-law did not stop at just paying for the switch. She had a whole timeline mapped out. Once the baby arrives, she planned to push for a DNA test and then use the results to argue you were unfit because of your work schedule. She even emailed the nurse about preparing paperwork for emergency guardianship in case you fought back. My stomach twisted so hard I had to grip the edge of the chair. $65,000 total funneled through accounts she controlled. Rebecca leaned forward. This is not just meddling anymore. This is calculated control over your child's entire future. I left her office with copies tucked in my bag and a sick feeling that the walls of my life were closing in faster than I could push them back. That evening, my husband came home to find me quiet at the kitchen table. He set his briefcase down and asked what was wrong. I almost told him everything right then, but the words stuck. Instead, I said I was just tired from work. He nodded and changed the subject to some project at his accounting firm, but I caught the way his eyes flicked to his phone when it buzzed. My mother-in-law had been texting him too. I knew because later that night I saw her name pop up on his screen while he thought I was asleep. The following weekend, my mother-in-law pushed for another gathering, this time at our house under the excuse of measuring for baby furniture. I knew it was another chance to corner me. My best friend offered to be there as backup, but I told her to stay away so my mother-in-law would not turn it into something ugly. The whole time my mother-in-law moved through my living room, she kept making little comments about how the house was not set up properly for a child and how lucky we were she lived so close. My sister-in-law showed up too, with catalogs already marked for the nursery she and my mother-in-law had picked out together. The pressure felt like a hand around my throat, tightening one notch at a time. Just as they were leaving, my mother-in-law paused at the door and delivered one last jab with that same calm smile. Remember what I said about gratitude, Brooke? This baby is a Larson first. You would do well to start acting like it. My husband stood beside her, nodding slightly, his earlier defensive outburst now replaced by quiet agreement that made my chest ache. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it, heart racing with the knowledge that the next move she made could change everything. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Rebecca Hayes with the subject line urgent. New documents just surfaced. I opened it with shaking fingers and read the first line. My mother-in-law had already contacted a lawyer about filing for grandparent rights the moment the baby was born. The email said she had been planning it for months. I stood there in the empty hallway, realizing the trap was already closing faster than I could have imagined. The email from Rebecca Hayes laid it all out in black and white. My mother-in-law had already consulted a family law attorney about filing for grandparent visitation rights and even emergency custody the moment the baby arrived. She had documents drafted claiming my work schedule made me unreliable and that the Larson family could provide the stability the child deserved. $65,000 in total payments traced back to her accounts, including an extra $15,000 funneled quietly to the clinic director to make sure every record could be adjusted if needed. My legs felt weak as I read the attached summary. This was not some overprotective phase. This was a calculated takeover. I called my best friend right away because I needed someone who would not sugarcoat it. She listened without interrupting while I read the email aloud, then said quietly, "Brooke, this is bigger than you thought. You have to get your own lawyer now, not later. Your mother-in-law is treating that baby like property she can claim." My best friend had always been the steady one, the friend who showed up with coffee and no judgment. She offered to come over that night, but I told her I needed to face my husband first. My hands were still shaking when I hung up. My husband walked in an hour later, loosening his tie from another long day at the accounting firm. I did not wait. I showed him the printed email and the bank traces Rebecca had included. Your mother paid to choose the donor. She is planning to file for custody rights the second the baby is born. This is not normal family help. This is control. His face went through a flash of shock before it settled into something harder. Then came the defensive outburst I had never heard from him before. You are overreacting, Brooke. She is just trying to help because she cares about the family legacy. You always twist everything she does into some conspiracy. His voice rose sharp and frustrated, like I had personally attacked him by exposing her. He grabbed his keys a minute later and said he needed air leaving the house without another word. The door slammed behind him, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. The next morning, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced with my sister-in-law in tow, both carrying shopping bags full of baby clothes and a thick folder of what she called family planning suggestions. I let them in because refusing would have started another round of guilt texts, but I kept my phone recording in my pocket the way my best friend had suggested. My mother-in-law set the bags on the kitchen counter and turned to me with that calm smile she always wore right before the knife came out. Brooke, I heard you have been talking to some investigator. That is a waste of time and money when the Larson family is right here, ready to support you. Some women simply are not cut out for balancing a career and motherhood without guidance. It is not a criticism. It is a fact. The words landed like ice water. My sister-in-law nodded beside her and added, Mom only wants what is best for the baby. You should be grateful instead of fighting us every step. I felt the heat rise in my chest but kept my voice steady. I know about the payments. I know about the donor you picked. I know you are planning to file for rights the day the baby is born. My mother-in-law's smile did not even flicker. And what exactly do you plan to do with that information? Drag the family through court and embarrass everyone? My husband deserves a wife who understands loyalty, not one who turns everything into a battle. She leaned in closer voice, dropping to that sarcastic edge that made my skin crawl. Some people just are not built for this role without help. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for all of us. My husband walked in at that exact moment and caught the tail end of her words. Instead of backing me up, he crossed his arms and gave me a look that mixed quiet anger with exhaustion. Brooke, can we not do this right now? Mom is only trying to be involved. You are making this way bigger than it needs to be. He did not raise his voice this time. He just shut down, turning away and busying himself with the mail on the counter like the conversation had never happened. The avoidance stung deeper than any shout could have. My sister-in-law smirked behind her mother's back, and I realized in that second how completely outnumbered I was in my own home. Rebecca Hayes called me later that afternoon with the final piece. She had spoken to Amanda Collins, the woman my mother-in-law had targeted 5 years earlier in Boise. Amanda confirmed the exact same pattern secret donor switch pressure for custody threats of legal action if she did not step back. Your mother-in-law has done this before, and she is good at it, Rebecca said. But this time, you have the paper trail and a witness willing to testify. We can stop her, but it is going to get ugly fast. I hung up, feeling both empowered and terrified. The baby kicked hard, right then a reminder that this fight was no longer just about me. 2 weeks later, my mother-in-law pushed for a family meeting at her house under the pretense of finalizing the nursery colors. I went because I knew it was the moment I had to draw the line. My best friend came with me for support, and my own mother, Susan Reynolds, drove up from Portland after I finally told her everything. She had always kept her distance from my mother-in-law, sensing the control issues early on, but she had never pushed. Now she sat beside me on the couch like a quiet shield. My mother-in-law started the meeting the way she always did, with that sweet tone laced with venom. Brooke, we all want what is best for the child. Stepping back from your job is not a punishment. It is a gift. The Larson family can provide everything you cannot while you are chasing deadlines. My sister-in-law jumped in immediately. It is not fair to expect Mom to pick up the slack forever just because you refuse to prioritize family. My husband sat beside my mother-in-law, saying nothing at first. When I pushed back and laid out the evidence in front of everyone, including the emails and Amanda's statement, his reaction shifted again. This time, it was a quiet anger that showed in the way his jaw tightened before he stood up and left the room without a word, the ultimate avoidance that told me exactly where his loyalty lay. My mother-in-law's face hardened completely. If you force this into court, Brooke, you will lose more than you realize. My husband will see who is really causing the problems here. The threat hung in the air, sharp and final. I did not yell. I simply stood up, looked her straight in the eye and said, "This baby is mine. I am filing for full legal protection tomorrow, and I will not let you turn my child into your project." My best friend and my mother backed me up immediately, their presence giving me the strength I needed. The room went dead silent except for the sound of my mother-in-law's sharp intake of breath. She had expected me to fold. I did not. The legal process moved faster than I thought possible. My own lawyer met with Rebecca's evidence and Amanda's statement and filed for a protective order the next week. The court granted temporary restrictions on my mother-in-law's contact while the case built. My husband moved out 2 days after the hearing. He said he needed space to think, but we both knew the marriage had cracked beyond repair. The divorce papers came 6 weeks later, and the judge ruled in my favor on the custody issues thanks to the fraud evidence. I kept the house and full parental rights. The baby was born healthy 3 months after that. A beautiful boy I named Lucas after no one in the Larson family. My mother and my best friend were in the delivery room with me. My husband never showed up. In the end, I won the legal battle and kept my child safe from her control. But the victory came with an irreversible loss. My husband chose his mother over us, and the family I thought I was building dissolved completely. I still see my sister-in-law and my father-in-law occasionally at neutral drop-offs for the few court-ordered visits, but the warmth is gone forever. My mother-in-law never apologized. She still sends letters through her lawyer claiming she only wanted to help. I read them, file them, and move on. The lesson I learned the hard way is that some family ties are not worth keeping when they come with a price tag measured in control and manipulation. I chose my son and my peace instead, even if it meant walking away from the life I once thought was mine. Some losses are the only way to gain something real. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to choose between keeping toxic family peace or protecting your own future, tell me in the comments what you decided and how it changed you. I read every single one, and it reminds me I am not alone in drawing those hard lines.